I'm Sue Harmsworth. I'm chairman of SBAR, and I've got a lovely, very knowledgeable panel. So I hope you're going to have lots of questions for them. Rich Weissman is senior partner of KSL Capital Partners. Omar Isfan is president of Servitel. And Andrew Gibson is vice president of Spas and Wellness for Fairmont Raffles Swiss Hotel, which obviously is a huge organization. Now, you'll see in the heading of the session that we were going to look at where does spa start and where does, with resorts and hotels, and where does wellness start and how are they mixing. I've obviously got strong opinions on that. And the title of the session is, Do Spas Make Money? I've also got strong opinions on that. But I've got such knowledgeable people here, I think I'll let them in turn kick off. And before I do that, I think I had to talk on trends just recently. And one of the trends I think we're about to start or have already started is I think we're going to have mass customer confusion about what wellness is, because everybody suddenly is using wellness as a title instead of spa. And if you have a spa with a hotel and a nutritionist, you're certainly not wellness. So defining wellness, it took us 15 years to design spa, and each culture looks at the word in a different way. So if I'm working in Japan, they see spa, the word, in a different way to Germany, and so on. And as you know, the Germans have used the word, or the Germanic-speaking countries have used the word wellness for centuries, so they see wellness in a completely different way to us in the UK, or the Middle East, or wherever. So I think if we can keep an open forum, and if you've got questions, please do give them to us, because it's not a big audience, so it gives us an opportunity to be quite intimate with these amazing gentlemen with so much knowledge. So the first question is really, do spas make money? And a huge question. And where does spa stop and where does wellness start? So who'd like to kick off on that? Shall I start with you, Andrew, with all your operational experience?
They were two massive questions. So can I just answer the first one first? Do spas make money?
Okay.
Well, I think that, for me, I'm biased, obviously, because this is my job, but I unequivocally say yes, they do. But that depends on how you measure money and how you measure the value of the spa to your property. And there's a lot of properties out there which would instantly disagree with me and say spas don't make money. But I've been in the business for 30 years. I've seen, regardless of whether it's a resort or an urban location, a well-designed spa that's effectively managed. Not only does the individual profit and loss make money, but it will double the ADR. It will add 200 to 300% on the food and beverage spend. It will extend the average length of stay by a day, and it will also probably have a 30% uptake on the room suites or the premium rooms in your hotel. That you don't see in the profit and loss anywhere.
Andrew, could you just quantify that? Because I know before you were with the company, or with now you were with Mandarin, and I know you've done a lot of data research on it.
Yeah.
So could you maybe let us know a little bit how you've done that analysis? Because I know you've done a lot.
I've started trying to put this measure, because there's very little metrics in spa to measure the performance, and especially benchmarking. But so I decided to look at it internally with the organisations I've worked with, and simply just taking the guest data and taking a spa guest that doesn't use the spa and comparing that against a spa guest that does use the spa, and looking at the ADR rates, the average length of stay, and all the metrics I've just described. In the last year, I've actually then tried to quantify that in dollar terms. And there's one particular hotel, about a 100-room hotel. It gets about a 30% capture rate, which is an exceptionally good capture rate of hotel guests. But in terms of those hotel guests that go to that spa, put $35 million into the hotel, of which $17 million of that is incremental spend over and above a hotel guest that does not use the spa. And I'm not talking about spending in the spa, I'm talking about spending on rooms and food and beverage.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, it is, I couldn't say that every spa makes money, definitely not. But as Andrew said, I think the key lies in conceiving the spa. What has happened is that in the 80s, this was not part of our industry. It was not part of the hotel industry, or before the 80s anyway. And then when it became a fad and almost like a must-do, people were starting to plug in what is called a wellness component or a spa component into their hotels, and typically retrofit, and that were kind of haphazard. It was almost a must-do, that there was an awareness of wellness in the consumer in general, and it was a response to that. And guess what? It somehow lent itself, for some reason or another, and I'm becoming quite allergic to it, that A, because the history is from a retrofit perspective, and B, it somewhat lends itself to be in a basement floor, which otherwise does not have too much of a alternative use. People thought that that's a formula. They thought that a hotel can have a spa in the basement, and that would be a great use of the event. And therefore, even on new builds, some people have started to look at it and say, hey, I've got unlimited basement space that I can build spas in. And they built spas that are actually not commensurate to the hotel at all. Whether the hotel's business model, the market segment, or anything to do with what the hotel's totality is going to do. It was either oversized, undersized, wrongly conceived, just to put it there. It was a haphazard event. And therefore, I think conceiving the spa today is very, very important, whether it's going to make money or not. If it's not conceived well, it's very likely that it's going to not get the traction, or it's going to be a mismatch with the hotel's normal traffic patterns, etc. So you cannot just plug in a spa and expect the average length of stay to increase by 1 day. It may not at all. That's number one. Number two is the way we do accounting. The uniform system of accounts in the hospitality industry does not really allow you to measure anybody's performance properly, actually, whether it's the rooms division, the F&B, or spa. Somehow we like to pick on spa, whether it makes money or not, very easily, and we don't do that with others, because departmental accounting is a misleading demeanor, actually. A lot of the overheads are not apportioned. And I'm not in favor of apportioning them either. There's been a lot of efforts in trying to do that. Per square meter allocation of utilities, and per cubic meter allocation of fresh air input, etc. Just doesn't work very well. And therefore, it's very difficult to measure a spa's profitability in the absence or in isolation. I can ask, does the front desk make money? No, it doesn't. Rooms division does. Does the engineering department make money? No, it doesn't. It just makes a loss all the time. Shall we stop engineering? So does the marketing department make any money? No, it doesn't. The hotel does. So I think we personally, our side, being the investor's advisor, we've got to have a holistic approach to this and look at the totality. And if you balance the product well to perform in the market properly, you look at the bottom line. And we would not really nitpick every single bit and piece, but consider it as a whole rather than by pieces. That's the way I take on it.
And before I go to Rich, I know, Andrew, you've got a view on that, on GM's accounting on RevPAR and how that...
Yeah, I echo everything Omar has just said, and the caveat I had in my opening statement was that if it's well designed and conceived and managed properly. But I think everybody, and you hear it in this conference throughout, they measure the performance of a hotel by RevPAR. I think that's an antiquated way of doing it. To me, a general manager is an asset manager responsible for the entire performance of the activities in that property. And if you measure then, I'm not saying to get rid of RevPAR because it's the only relevant benchmark in where you can compare apples to apples. But if you want to reward an asset manager on the performance of his property, you should look at total guest spend per stay.
Some good news there. We're now adding a letter. So we're going to start seeing TrevPAR more and more. And that is, of course, a much better metric. It's going to be a nightmare for the consolidators to acquire that data and actually publish it and analyze it. But in fact, if you can, where you can, TrevPAR is the real measure rather than RevPAR, definitely. And it's coming in.
Rich.
Well, look, I think everything that's been said here is correct. It's all about execution. I would say that, our experiences with large-scale resorts is that absolutely spas make money. I don't even know if one should even say equate the profitability back to rooms. In my view, that's almost even more antiquated because the rooms are one measure, and the operations of food and beverage and spa and, in our case, golf and all the other amenities that we typically have at a resort we would own all have to stand on their own, and we need to understand the measures of profit and loss relative to those. I think it's kind of a knee-jerk reaction of the industry to take everything back down to a rooms measure because everybody kind of looks at, well, what are you paying per key for something, and how does that equate to the profitability of the hotel? So what are you earning in revenue per key relative to what you paid per key? And at the end of the day, these businesses, particularly as you get into real businesses that have dynamic amenities like spas, the profitability in the business as a standalone business unit should be the measure. I think also, let me move away from the financial metric or the financial discussion, because I think everybody that's been addressed here. One of your questions is the distinction between spa and wellness. And I think that's a very important question for the industry today because there is a real difference between spa and wellness. I think spa for a lot of people is, is the massage, it's the facial, it's the more, I think, tactile aspects of the experience in the environment versus wellness today. The way we look at wellness is more experiential. It's more about mind and body. It's more about people refreshing themselves in a more, whether you want to call it spiritual or similar way. And I think there are a lot of people who believe they're in the wellness business that aren't in the wellness business. Just offering a yoga class as part of a spa operation is not wellness. It's just another modality of exercise. There's something that's, I think, more fundamental to people about wellness in terms of being able to go to an environment, experience it, and walk away with something that helps them recharge themselves and have something that they can take away from that experience that, again, helps them in their daily life on an ongoing basis. And so I think our focus as an investor is both on spa and wellness, but we do understand there's a distinction between the two.
And is it more expensive to deliver wellness than spa?
Well, interestingly, no. I mean, it is in terms of the facilities and the scale of what you might need to do. In other words, I think the guest who's going for a wellness experience is expecting an environment that is going to be conducive to that. So you can do that in an urban environment. It's a little more difficult. I mean, it's more traditionally, done in environments, desert environments or mountain environments or seaside environments, places where people naturally, by just the mere fact of being in that environment, relax and get some utility that's not associated with any particular action. It's just the presence and being there. So I think it's that said, and so I think because you're looking for that environment, the costs associated with creating that environment may be more than a traditional hotel. But I think in urban environments, it's a little bit more challenging.
Do you have an opinion on that? Because I mean, my problem is, what's the difference between a hotel with a good wellness spa, bearing in mind that every culture uses the word wellness differently. So when you talk about enhancing people's lives, tweaking your day-to-day life rather than making major life changes, to me, a destination wellness within Europe would be somewhere like the Viva or the Lanzerhof or Shivsom in Asia, or places you go specifically to make changes to your life. So, and I think a lot of that has a medical connotation as well. So where do we go from, so we don't get mass confusion in the next 5 to 10 years, where do we go from the hotel spa to the hotel wellness and not mislead the consumer? Because at the moment, I think we are, and I think your messaging has to be very clear. So to those hoteliers or industry people in the room, I think we've really got to get our messaging clear, because nobody really understands what wellness is, and from country to country it varies. So where are you going with that?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, just that pure concept of what a spa is something that's been debated for about 10 years, and that people don't even know what that is. And we've had dog spas and dental spas that were supposed to be detrimental. Yeah, fish spas, supposed to be detrimental, but they haven't really been detrimental to the business. All they've done is made the word spa more familiar. And I think there is a great confusion over wellness, and it's somewhat easier. I wouldn't say, I caution how I use that word, but it's somewhat easier to try to have a visual image of what wellness is at a resort or at your Lanzerhof or Chiva something. It's somewhat easier. What is wellness to an urban hotel in a tertiary city? That's the interesting bit, and how is it done? And that's where I think why the relevance of this subject is coming up now, is because that's where it's starting to go. It's starting to go into the urban environment, and it will come in two ways. One is the pure design. A lot more thought processes going into the wellness of the guest purely by staying at the hotel, whether they participate in activities or not, by the lighting systems, the air conditioning systems, the water systems, and so on. So that's the first area in design. The second area then is in the activities themselves. To come back to your question, I don't believe it is any more expensive to do, because it's a thought process. But if you apply the thought process, it's possible to engage in the activities that will be suited. I believe that the reason why you don't have global chains of destination spas is because those destination spas were formed with a lot of passion by an individual that created them and made them work, and it was very difficult to scale that up. I believe the critical mass is now reaching where it is possible to scale them, and I think you'll start to see them roll out. Probably you guys there will start to roll them out, but I think that that's a model that will start to apply, and you'll do a light version in urban locations where you're able to use the resources from your head base to farm them out.
And you don't think your staffing cost, I mean, my experience is the staffing cost does go much higher, because when you start with naturopaths, nutritionists, acupuncturists, and all of those modalities, by their very nature, the salaries
But I don't think that, and you and I know we sometimes disagree on this. I'm more in his camp, which is I think there's a passive wellness, which you can achieve in a hotel by just the environment, right? So the room product and lighting and what the lobby feels like, and that's the passive aspect of wellness. There's the active aspect of wellness, and I think it's also, defined by where you are, as you say, in the globe, because, in the U.S., people who go to destination wellness resorts aren't looking for, in most cases, all that medical aspect of it.
I don't mean medical,
yeah, but
I mean more complimentary. Yeah,
but they don't want infusions and things like that. It's just not part of the culture necessarily. It's more about, mind, body, hiking, going out in the wilderness and with someone who's explaining to them the environment they're in, and then experiencing something in that's different from their daily life that helps them relax and recharge. I think then there's maybe a different aspect of wellness when you're in Switzerland. You and I have talked about that, where people think about it more in the medical sense of it. You go to Asia, there's a whole different aspect of it. And then layer on top of that who experiences it, right? I mean, in some parts of the world, it's largely a female product that's consumed by women, right? You go to Asia and the Middle East, it's largely consumed by men, not as much by women. So that just changes by its very nature what the offering is and what it means to people to experience wellness.
I think on that issue of labour costs, the spa industry itself is inherently top-heavy on
intensive,
labour,
yes,
because it's very difficult to get economies of scale of that, and that's forced creativity in your business models of how you hire therapists. So I believe that those that are a little bit more creative and intuitive will find ways of bringing in your holistic practitioners, your naturopaths, and so on, and finding ways of working partnerships with the local community to service them and work that way. That's how I think it.
My take on it is that from an investment perspective, I don't think a wellness product is any more expensive to set up than a spa product, no problem. But I think operationally, I think it needs to be more expensive, first of all. It's not just because it is. I think the consumer today is extremely wellness savvy, or becoming more and more so every day. It starts in the morning with your TV or your app or your radio in the car. That's all, some sort of a stimulus, some sort of an input. And then you have some products that you can put at home. You can put some equipment at home. You can actually turn your bathroom into a wellness spa. I mean, so it's all over the place. So therefore, an expectation from what an institution claims itself to be a spa or a wellness destination or a wellness setup is much higher than what is commonly available in the supplement of the newspaper or what's available in your own bathroom. So therefore now the expectation is going to be geometrically rising for these institutions to deliver something that I can't get in my daily routine. So the know-how, the caliber of the individuals there cannot be run-of-the-mill. And they've got to be outstanding, they've got to be transformational. And people relate wellness to transformation, whether transformation from stress to relaxation, whether it is a dull skin to a bright skin, or whatever it is, but there's got to be transformation. So, and any ordinary methods of transformation is going to be discounted. Now you deliver me the extraordinary, and you deliver it to me at a price that I'm ready to pay, but your cost should be low. That doesn't quite gel. I think there's got to be some substance behind it. Otherwise, people who think that delivering wellness is easy are going to fail dramatically just by putting saunas and a therapist who's bored there waiting for massaging somebody. So there's a little bit of a danger I detect here because people don't put enough into it.
No, I think it's semantics, and I actually
Partly
think
so.
a lot of it is semantics. Go on.
So let me propose this. You're a middle manager at a company. You've had a really stressful day, and you're driving home, and you stop at Massage Envy, which is a chain of, massage, storefront massage, and for $65 you get a massage, and you walk out of there refreshed. Is that for someone who's middle class? That's wellness.
Sure.
So I don't think it necessarily has to be an expensive proposition. So if I'm staying, and I'll pick on one of our big sponsors. If I'm staying at a Holiday Inn, and in some place in the U.S. or here in Europe, and they happen to have a room or in the lobby a Massage Envy type product, and I've just come from a meeting and I'm really tired, and I can go in there for whatever is it, 40 euros or 50 euros, and I can get a massage because I can't afford to go stay at the Corinthia and experience the spa there, right? So I'll go and right?
Your outfit in
or Miraval, and well, they're all mine. It seems to be these days, so it's okay. But for me, that person, that is wellness. So I said this, and Sue knows this is the Global Spa Conference. I think sometimes as an industry, we get so caught up in our own definitions because we're so jaded by the environments in which we exist that we forget that there is there's scale and there's different aspects of all these industries that serve different markets. And we can't forget about those because those different markets are equally as profitable, if not as profitable. So when you talk about can spas be profitable, you can create profitable spas. It just depends on making sure, again, the execution is appropriate for who the market is that you are pursuing.
Oh,
I totally agree.
I agree with that.
We
too.
all
That
agree.
there's scale. Yeah,
We all agree.
Like yes.
I would just add something on that I'm observing now in the hotels is, and you talk about customer confusion.
Yeah.
I probably am adding to it.
You are.
But I think I'm adding to it in a way that actually creates something for a different group of people. And talking about, say, Massage Envy in the lobby, we wouldn't do that in our hotels, but the concept of what you're saying is delivering experiences that meet the needs of your guests in hotels.
Yep.
And I think spas sometimes have lost that,
Yeah.
or you
Exactly.
get people that are
mismatch.
designing them that are conceptually not marrying that to your market
I
needs.
agree
Exactly.
totally.
That
And
was my
today
initial
you've got
point.
to today you cannot be precious and say, oh, we're going to have a wonderful experience and you're going to reach nirvana and there's going to be a nice sauna at the end of the journey. What you've got to say is, what do our guests need? And in a city hotel, mostly it's a time-bound factor that you need to deliver to. So you need to find an activity that delivers wellness, and wellness is perceived in many different ways.
Absolutely.
So you can do it in a beauty area with just nail bars, or you can do it in a full 2-hour experience.
Perfect example, I mean, if you're, and you could say, is this wellness? So you're a female executive, and you've got a busy schedule, and you're coming out of the hotel, and there's a concept dry bar, right, where you can go and get your hair quickly, coiffed and the such. That probably saving them time and everything else like that, that's as important to them and de-stressing their day. So I think that's the point, is that, there's a spectrum here.
Absolutely.
I saw a very interesting concept in the upmarket part of Toronto. It's a young, affluent group there that are first-time buyers buying their apartment. And, of course, I think whilst we're all getting connected on the technology, we're actually losing the social interaction of face-to-face. So this bright entrepreneur has started a cocktail bar. So it's a long cocktail bar, as long as this. Exactly on the back side of it, exactly mirror imaged, is a manicure bar. So what happens? All the ladies go in, they get their manicure, or the guys come in, have a drink, see the ladies there, and pop back and have their manicures.
Well, Spa Life at Corinthia is quite interesting because it's obviously a big spa, but we've got Manicure Martini and we've got 8 stations, and we book that as a space, for instance. And then at the other, so we do quick treatments for people. In fact, for the we do it for men as well. But the ladies can do a facial, a manicure, pedicure with 2 therapists all in the same room. They can do manicure, pedicure and hair. So all those fast things that save them time, really, as you say, for women. But then at the other end of the scale, we do have, guys, the 2-hour treatments and the natural, the acupuncturist, all those things. And they are fully booked. What we've learned at Corinthia London is we have 50% of our business, or possibly 60%, is local, and we have a membership, and that combination of membership, day spa, hotel guests, the complementary practitioners are all busy, but that tends obviously to be local. But we've also got people actually physically choosing the hotel on a regular basis because of the osteopath, the personal training, and so on and so forth. So maybe before we move on to the next subject, have any of you got questions that you'd like to ask the panel on what we've just been talking about? Deathly silence. Yes?
Yeah, Richard, I agree with your point to some extent, but I think that there is perhaps an over-commoditisation of the idea of wellness, and I actually agree with what Ona said, that I think the consumer will become more discerning, because really I think wellness is about mind-body connection, and not just about reducing stress. And we're inundated with information about calories, about stress, and I think there will be a tipping point at some point where people actually recognise what is true wellness as opposed to just a massage or a blow dry.
Do you want to say something?
No, look, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm saying that over time this all, I agree, will evolve. I think my point is that even as it evolves, there's still going to be a distinction between the affordability of wellness and then how people think about their consumption of wellness. And I think this is where we, as an industry, we struggle, which is the definitional aspect of it. So I think that's it. As we have struggled with spa,
and we are going to. I think we really are going to an era where we're going to have to define it, because otherwise the consumer's going to be hugely confused.
They're going to create expectations way too high for something.
Well, and they're going to be disappointed.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'll just say one more thing. One of the trends that's been identified is that we've just come from the era of the body, and we're going into the era of the mind. So, because the mind's, it's now being proven scientifically and medically how much the mind affects the molecular structure, how our whole body physiology changes, mind waves. We're getting brain waves showing how the kids with their technology, it's affecting their brain waves and all sorts of things. So we are in the industry, I know it's probably not mainstream yet, but we are really looking at that as a subject. I mean, it's all stress related at the end of the day, but we're looking at techniques, and sleep deprivation is one of our biggest issues, and we're addressing that in a lot of our spas with programs that actually aren't labor intensive, it's techniques and things like that. So there's lots of things. Yes, sorry.
What
say spa in a hotel, you tend to think more of the physical contours of the space. And wellness, as Richard explained, is more the experience that you get at the end of it. So typically, no one will ask you, do you have a wellness center? You're more likely to be asked, do you have a spa? And at the end of it, hopefully you get a wellness experience out of it. So I think semantics overlap over there as well in terms of actual physical contours of the building, which you can term a spa, yet the experience ultimately could be wellness.
Well, in my experience as well, because we've been doing holistic wellness, well, holistic spa, let's say, for a long time. And we've been doing programs that are very basic, you know, where you do a 2-hour treatment that's working on the head and the brain right the way down to the reflexology zones and personal training and hammams and all of that stuff. And the benefits are well proven in our industry of lowering blood pressure, of all sorts of things. And I call that escapism, relaxation, and actually we probably should talk about it because I think it is semantics. I think that if you put people in certain environments that are very beautiful, where the air's amazing and you've got certain facilities and experiential things, as you say, by its very nature, it's wellness. But I think the consumer expectation and how we break it down is just going to be the issue going forward. And there's too many people, as there was with the word spa, using the word wellness when it has nothing to do with wellness, and that's going to be the problem, I think. One of the other things that we said we'd talk about, unless anybody's got any other subjects they'd like to bring up, was mixed use, how spa works. And I'd quite like to break that out, because I'm struggling with it myself, into residential with nothing else. Mixed use to me isn't such a problem, because it's mixed use can be housing, condos, spa, shops, marinas, whatever it is. Whereas residential on its own, to me, is much more problematic. But I'll let these guys. Shall I start with you, Rich, this time?
Yeah, we've done a lot of mixed-use resort development where a critical component of the development has been residential. But what we have found is that, as with anything, is that you can't have those beds be cold. In other words, they can't be just sold to people who don't occupy on a year-round basis. So we generally will think that the key to success for a mixed-use development where you have resort and residential combined is to actually contractually limit the amount of time the owner can spend in their unit and try to push them towards having that unit be part of a rental pool that is rented out to hotel guests. If you can do that, you can be successful. So, for instance, at some of our resorts, we will earn, twice as much outside the hotel room as we will inside the hotel room, and that's because, one, we're getting this guest, and we're getting the benefit of these hotel rooms, which have higher occupancy because you have they're usually more like homes, so you have a larger number of guests staying in them. But also because you have these larger campuses, you can then over-improve the campuses with better facilities, and then that drives the local business, which is critical to the success which Sue was pointing to with Corinthia. So I think it's a virtuous cycle. So I think the idea of a combined mixed-use residential resort opportunity does work, because it does give you the opportunity to have, I think, a greater array of amenities and better amenities than you could otherwise afford. That all being said, we always look at these things as the hotel has to stand on its own. It has to make money on its own. It cannot be subsidized by the real estate. The real estate is an appendage. And one of the biggest failings of this last cycle was quite the opposite, where people were building hotels that made no sense. And the only reason that they built the hotel was it was an amenity to a residential community they were building. And, I don't know statistically, but I would say the vast majority of those failed. It was the second owner who made money and the third owner who's made money with those.
Yeah, I agree. First of all, I think we need to look at it from two perspectives. One of them is urban, the other one is resort, and naturally full-time living versus seasonal living. If I address the mixed-use developments that we advise on the full-time living urban, it becomes a much easier methodology to size, estimate, and what kind of programming you're going to put into a spa component or a wellness component within all that, and who it belongs to, whether it belongs to the hotel and actually acts as a service arm to the community, or in fact you spread it out into islands and everybody has easy access to it, or in terms of satellites, or you centralize it. But it's somewhat easier to compose it once you look at the demography, once you look at what your end users are going to be. It's a bit of a more challenge when you get into the resort side. As you said, I mean, cold beds are our fear, and therefore, and it is very difficult to estimate. We're in a new era. I mean, these are new things. I mean, these are just a decade or a couple of decades old that you're building a hotel and residences together, and branded residences, using the hotel as a jockey, as a brand giver or a service amenity to enhance value of the acquisition of each individual unit, and then never look back in terms of the future of that hotel or the entire community as well. So there's also the issue of what of that is going to be loaded onto the service charges of people who buy those units as well. So therefore, that's a bit of a challenge to configure, to size up, and to program the wellness element in a resort like that. But I think now we're becoming, we learned some bitter lessons. And I think we've now become quite competent in actually conceiving those as well. But our preference is that to make that closer cousin to the hotel and let the residential use it as an amenity and just size it so that you can estimate what kind of a catchment you're going to make out of the residential when they're there. And when they're not there, I don't collapse.
Right.
So that's a balance that we've been mastering now in our last 2-3 developments, and it's getting better and better and better. And I think you can get a very, very good, solid operation. Particularly, I must say, if your resort is slightly spa-centric. So if the flavor and the actual marketing impetus is a little bit centered on wellness and spa, rather than I'm a resort, by the way, I have a spa, type of thing, but it is a little bit more spa-centric, wellness-centric, it becomes even an easier way to size it, equip it, operate it, and program it for you guys. I mean, and I'm more comfortable there. I'm less scared.
Yeah.
Whereas if a spa is an amenity also to the hotel, and in fact the main flavor of the hotel is not that, then it becomes a bit of a, we can go back to the beginning of the session about whether they make money or not, and I'll give you the answer, no.
Yeah.
That's where it goes.
Just to add, I agree with my colleagues here, but just to add a little bit on that, I think if it's a freestanding residential unit and it's got no other component of it, then it becomes a market employed by the developer, and it's very, very difficult to make any money out of that once it's open. If it is part of a mixed use, then I am inclined to agree with my colleagues completely that it should be something that is done from a central perspective and services it. With one caveat in that, I would almost always recommend a small fitness centre in the residential community. Okay, you've got a certain capex cost there, but it's a minimal capex cost, and that relieves the burden on the central facility. But all the other services you can centralise.
Why do you recommend that? I mean, relieve the stress, but
relieve the stress
rather than create the critical mass?
The reason I say that is because, one, homeowners start to get very picky about their favourite machine and tell the hotel guests to get off their machine. That's one.
So there's
secondly,
this ownership issue.
You have exactly the same problem. It doesn't really matter how big you build it. You always have exactly the same issue. The peak time, and the peak time coincides with when the homeowners want to go out to work, or anything if they're going to do it at exactly the same time as the hotel guests. You never have enough treadmills or enough CV equipment. So, I mean, you can build. There's probably a point where there is an equilibrium point.
I think it depends on size.
I mean,
it's
I
probably
want to,
quite large.
No, I just asked the question so that you actually say it out loud, because we find that there's an attitude problem.
Yes.
Homeowner owns the damn place,
Yeah.
and the hotel guest is just there, and he's a nuisance.
Yeah.
So, and we don't want our hotel guests to be nuisances. I mean, we want to pamper them, look after them, and glorify them. Whereas the homeowners come and say, "Who's this? You know, I don't want them in my treadmill." You know, that's something that needs to be addressed very well.
And I do think it depends on size. It depends on number of units.
Of
So the one I'm struggling with, and everybody in the industry is struggling with, and I would really like an answer somehow, I don't know how to do it, is the standalone high-end residential where they want a spa, but they don't want to open it to the public. And obviously, the obvious answer is service charges, cross charges. And of course, the developer wants your brand and he wants the perfect spa because he wants to sell his condos or villas or whatever it is. And then after 2 years, he's going to exit. And then the homeowners...
They're stuck with the cost.
And they don't want the cost, exactly.
I can give you the answer from the operator of the spa. Just give me a management fee for it each year.
Fixed.
No, but
Fixed
I've done
problem is
that.
that
I've done that.
The homeowners
It's the
rebel.
homeowners rebel.
That was
I've
course
come
they
up with
would
all
rebel.
sorts of
that was
formulas.
Canyon Ranch, Florida. I mean, that was the
Yeah.
biggest issue, is the homeowners didn't want to get stuck with a big spa contract.
Yeah.
They all loved the idea, but everybody wakes up one morning
Exactly.
and they realize, well, hold it. I'm not going to have a massage today. I'm going to go to work. It's not, they're not going to use it every day. So it's just not, that's the difference. And I think Omar was saying it depends. So for instance, at our resort, Miraval, we have a homeowner component, but they bought there because it is a destination wellness and spa resort. And so they know that when they're there to use the facilities. And so they're going for their massage or their, yoga or whatever it is every day. That's why they're there. But they don't live there year-round either. They come for periods of time, they leave, they come back when they want to have that experience and be in that environment. So it works because the sole purpose for owning a home at Miraval in Tucson is to be in that environment. But if you've got a high-rise building in some major city that's a luxury apartment building and you put a spa in, the likelihood that you're going to get enough volume.
Exactly.
And it's all well and good until the developer leaves and the homeowners are
Yeah.
stuck with the cost and they don't want it.
I'll give you the tip of how to respond to those guys.
It's
the
just so
developer,
many of them.
I know. The developer will come to you and says, this is amazing development, and Sue, please put your spa here for me, right? I mean, the hoteliers fell for it for a while. When somebody was developing this residential and all of a sudden came to Four Seasons and said, come and put me a 90-room Four Seasons here, and or whatever, it's just a brand maker for the residences. And they fell for it a few times, and then they wised up. And now their answer is, really, what's the proportion? Tell me. How many residences are you, how many hotel rooms are you giving me? 100. Okay, you can build 30 residential. And the developer actually was intending to have 100 hotel rooms and 400 residences, actually. And in fact, the hotel was just a little jokey and not really a business unit. So your answer to them is that, really, give me an independent study that suggests that this spa is a commercial venture that will actually carry itself, and we'll look at it together and move from then on.
They know it won't.
Oh, well, then, sorry. I mean, then your answer is pretty clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not a brand giver for a residential.
Exactly.
Why don't you buy my products? Tell them that. Why don't you buy my
I do all
products
of
and
that,
your
Omar.
boys can do your massages yourselves?
I'm just saying for these guys, because I think there's more and more individual residences where they want spa or they want wellness. And interesting to your point, Rich, Champneys in the UK tried that a few years ago. Champneys Living, a lot of people tried it and it just didn't work.
It's a good marketing ploy for the developer.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I don't fall for it. Yeah, I mean, unless you want to produce some shower heads, spa, and then give them shampoos, and then tell the developer, why don't you call your development spa residences? But I'm not going to have a spa in it, actually. It's just that you'll have some components. We'll adorn your place with our touches. I
mean, it's no different from the golf industry. I mean, we have a company that that's made a living out of buying golf courses inside of communities where the community was developed around the golf course, and then one day the developer's done and the community realizes they have this very big expense to carry and not enough critical mass to carry it, and so all of a sudden they don't have the ability to manage it to the quality that they want it. And the only answer is they have to go and sell it, and then the answer becomes, yes, sell it. Our company, Club Corp, would buy these, and then they'd say, but the answer becomes, we're going to open up this club to people beyond the borders of this community. And then that's essentially what you'd have to do in the residential is it can't just be the people in the building, it's got to be open to everybody.
That was the business model of the
comes back
Deadmans, right?
almost-
Yes.
That was
Almost
exactly what they were doing.
Yeah.
I mean,
Almost comes back to the original question of how do you make money in an urban. I think urban because I think it's more challenging in an urban location than
Well,
for a
urban,
spa.
I mean, residential urban, as long as they'll have a small membership and some outside business, which you can completely
See, there's the
manage.
key. So if we design it in the basement and we stick it in the basement and we cut off public access to it,
you're dead.
you're making it very hard.
Yeah.
You've got to you've got to think about who's going to be using it. And I believe in an urban location you've got to have some kind of easy street access because 50 to 60% of your business, and in some places I know 90% of your business
Is
is the
local.
local community. And of course once they're in, they'll spend double on food and beverage.
Yeah, yeah. Questions? On anything to do with wellness spas, financing? No? I think we're probably just about out of time, unless, you
Are we?
sure? Yeah? Well, thank you all, and thank you very much to the panel. We've got so many brains here. I wish we could have them all the time and pick them a bit further. So thank you very much, everybody.